Mira Collins was a young woman with aspirations far greater than the limits of her humble existence. At only 23 years old, she devoted herself wholeheartedly at Rosie's Diner, a small, worn-out eatery nestled in the heart of New York City. The peeling paint on the walls and the dim flicker of the neon open sign outside echoed her hardships, yet Mira always found a reason to smile. She possessed a rare talent, not only in attending to patrons, but in making each person feel acknowledged and important. Despite her lengthy hours and minimal income, Mira had a unique habit that set her apart. Every evening after finishing her shift, she would collect the leftover meals from the diner and share them with the homeless individuals she encountered on her route home. For her, it was a simple gesture of compassion, but for those she aided, it was invaluable. On one especially chilly night, rain cascaded endlessly, drenching the city sidewalks. Mira hurried along, pulling her tattered jacket tightly around her frame, when she spotted a small silhouette crouched beneath a bus stop awning. It was a young boy, perhaps 8 years old, trembling from the cold, his clothing drenched. She paused, her heart heavy at the sight. "Hey there," she spoke softly, crouching beside him. "Are you all right? Where are your parents?" The boy lifted his head, his expression pale and scared. "I don't have anyone," he whispered. "I'm hungry." Without hesitation, Mira grasped his tiny hand and guided him back to the diner. Rain drenched them both, but she paid it no mind. Once inside, she wrapped him in a snug blanket and served him a piping hot bowl of soup. The child's face brightened as he ate, and for the first time that night, Mira felt a gentle warmth bloom in her chest, despite the freezing night. What Mira didn't know was that someone had been observing her from across the street. A sleek black vehicle idled quietly with its engine humming. Inside sat Ethan Blake, a billionaire renowned for his brilliant business sense and reserved nature. He had been cruising through the neighborhood after a taxing day, hoping solitude might clear his thoughts. Then he saw her. Initially, it was mere intrigue. Why was a young woman kneeling in the rain beside a destitute child? But as Ethan continued to watch her lead the boy into the diner and care for him so tenderly, he couldn't divert his eyes. Her behavior was so pure, so altruistic, that it stirred something deep within him. "Who is she?" Ethan muttered, eyes fixed on the diner. For the first time in ages, he felt something awaken inside him, an emotion akin to admiration and curiosity. He jotted down the name of the diner and drove off, yet the image of Mira lingered in his mind long after he reached his opulent penthouse. The following days flew by for Mira as she balanced back-to-back shifts and looked after her younger brother who... Mira barely had a moment to breathe between double shifts and caring for her younger brother, who depended on her to cover his school expenses. She had little time to reflect on the boy she had helped, yet the memory of his grateful smile lingered, offering her just enough motivation to keep going through her exhaustion. Meanwhile, Ethan couldn't get the image of the diner waitress out of his thoughts. He possessed everything wealth could provide, yet he couldn't erase the vision of her, drenched in the rain, offering warmth and kindness to a child with nothing. It wasn't merely her actions that captivated him. It was the sincerity in her heart. He had to learn more about her. One evening, Ethan made up his mind. Dressed in a sharply tailored suit that stood out in the modest atmosphere of the diner, he stepped inside Rosette's. The soft chime of the doorbell drew Mira's attention as she balanced a tray of dishes. Her hair was slightly frizzy from the humidity, but her smile remained as dazzling as ever. Ethan paused, momentarily taken aback by the familiarity of her face. Mira greeted him with the same warmth she offered all her patrons. "Welcome to Rosette's." "Feel free to sit anywhere," she said, her voice upbeat despite the fatigue behind her eyes. Ethan chose a corner booth, his eyes quietly following her as she moved gracefully from table to table. He observed as she treated every guest with the same compassionate demeanor he had seen that rainy night. She helped an elderly man count his change, gave a free coffee refill to a struggling mother, and even paused to check on a regular who looked unusually down. Each gesture only confirmed what Ethan already believed. This woman was remarkable. After finishing his meal, Ethan handed Mira the check with little conversation, but before leaving, he discreetly tucked an envelope beneath his plate. Mira didn't notice it until she came to clean the table. Inside, she found a thick stack of crisp bills, far more than any regular gratuity. Her hands trembled as she counted the money, her thoughts racing. She rushed outside, hoping to catch a glimpse of the mysterious man, but he had vanished. The sleek black vehicle she vaguely remembered spotting was no longer there. For the rest of the night, Mira couldn't stop thinking about him. Who was he? And what had prompted such a generous gesture? The next morning, Rosette's was buzzing as usual. Mira tied her apron and began her shift, unaware of how dramatically her life was about to shift. Her thoughts briefly returned to the homeless boy from a few nights ago. She hoped he had found safety, but as the breakfast crowd grew, her attention returned to the bustling diner. Around noon, the front door swung open, and a tall, sharply dressed man stepped in. His fine suit and polished shoes stood out among the casually dressed customers. Mira didn't notice him at first, focused on taking an older couple's order. But then the hostess leaned over and whispered, "That gentleman over there asked for you to serve his table." Mira glanced up. Mira looked at the man with a hint of surprise. She didn't recognize him immediately, but when their eyes locked, a strange sense of familiarity pulled at her. The man offered a warm smile, his gaze lingering as though he were trying to read her face. Mira brushed off the odd sensation and walked toward his table, notepad and pen ready. "Good afternoon," she greeted him with her usual welcoming tone. "What can I get for you today?" The man hesitated slightly before replying, "I'll take today's special, but only if you promise to join me for a coffee break later." Mira blinked, momentarily caught off guard by the unexpected request. "Oh, I'm sorry," she said with a polite laugh. "I don't usually get time for breaks during my shift. Is there anything else you'd like with your meal?" The man chuckled softly. "Just the special for now," he replied, handing her the menu. As Mira walked away, she couldn't shake the feeling that there was something unusual about him, like he knew her, but was intentionally keeping quiet. Throughout his meal, the man kept a close eye on Mira. He watched how she served every customer with patience and warmth, even under pressure. She moved with practiced ease, balancing trays and offering genuine smiles, even to those who barely acknowledged her. She paused to check on every table, ensuring guests were comfortable. To him, it was obvious Mira wasn't just a diligent worker. She was exceptional. When she eventually brought him the bill, he reached for his wallet and offered a credit card. But as she turned to walk away, he stopped her. "Wait," he said gently. "There's something I'd like to ask you." Mira paused, tilting her head slightly. "Yes?" He leaned forward a little, lowering his voice. "Do you remember helping a homeless child on the street last week?" Her eyes widened in surprise. "Yes, I do," she answered. "But how do you know about that?" He smiled knowingly. "Let's just say, I witnessed something that day, a young woman showing true compassion to someone in need. I was genuinely moved by it." Mira blushed, feeling slightly flustered. It was nothing, really. He needed help, and I just did what anyone should. Not everyone would have done what you did, he said firmly. Most people would have walked past without a second glance. He handed her a folded sheet of paper along with the receipt. "This is for you," he added. "Open it after I leave." Confused, Mira accepted it, too polite to protest. She watched as the man stood, gave her one last meaningful smile, and walked out of Rosette's. Her curiosity quickly took over. She unfolded the note. Inside was a check for $50,000. Below the staggering amount was a handwritten message. "Your kindness has inspired me. Use this to build the future you deserve. A grateful stranger." Mira's heart pounded as she clutched the check, hands trembling. She rushed outside, scanning the street for any trace of him. But he was already gone. Mira stood there, her thoughts racing. Who was he? Why would he give her such a tremendous gift? And why did he seem so familiar? That night, back in her small apartment, Mira couldn't stop replaying the encounter in her mind. The check still lay on her table, untouched. It felt like too much, far beyond anything she could accept. She considered returning it, but there was no signature, no address, no phone number. She had no way of contacting him. Days turned into weeks, and slowly, Mira's life began to shift. With the money, she paid off her lingering debts. She began setting aside savings toward a dream she'd long buried, opening a small cafe where anyone, even the homeless, could sit down to a warm meal and feel at home. The check had not only given her financial freedom, but also a sense of purpose. Still, questions about the mysterious man lingered. Who was he really, and why had he chosen her? One evening, as Mira strolled home after a long shift at Rosette's, a sleek black vehicle pulled up beside her. The tinted window lowered, and there he was, the stranger from the restaurant. "I hoped I'd run into you," he said with a friendly grin. Mira froze, her heartbeat quickening. "You again? Why did you give me that money? And who are you?" The man stepped out of the car, his face serious yet gentle. "I owe you some answers," he said calmly. "My name is Damian Cross. I'm the CEO of Cross Industries." Mira's mouth fell open. Cross Industries. It was one of the largest corporations in the nation. Damian Cross was a name that appeared regularly in headlines, usually tied to billion-dollar deals. "I didn't tell you who I was right away," Damian continued. "I needed to see who you were without knowing who I am. And what I saw was someone rare. The way you helped that boy on the street, it wasn't just charity. It showed your character." Mira was stunned, struggling to find words. "But why me? I'm just a waitress." Damien smiled warmly. "You're so much more than that. You have a heart this world desperately needs, and I believe in investing in people who make a difference." He handed her another envelope. "This," he said, "is the deed to a small cafe in the city center. It's yours now. Think of it as a seed, one that I believe you'll grow into something beautiful." Tears welled up in Mira's eyes. She tried to decline, but Damien gently insisted. "Promise me one thing," he said softly. "Keep being the person who inspired me that day. Keep lifting others." From that moment on, Mira's life blossomed. Her cafe became a refuge for the weary, a warm place for anyone who needed it. She poured her heart into every cup of coffee and every meal served. Though she never fully understood why fate brought Damian Cross into her life, one truth became crystal clear. Even the smallest act of kindness can ripple through the world and change it.